Hey everyone, welcome to the New Populist. I'm Dave Brown. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I've been away for a while, busy working, but this last week has been so ridiculous I had to stop and talk about it because there are so much things going around, so many people saying things that aren't so. It's not a new thing that our liberal friends have a lot of opinions that are based on things they think are facts but are not, and their emotions. And this thing with Roe v. Wade, they're just spitting out all this nonsense that's easily disprovable. And no one's actually, if you notice on Twitter or anywhere else, actually making an argument for why legally, and that's the key word, legally, why Roe v. Wade was a bad ruling. So I want to roll through this stuff here and just one by one address these issues because other people have as well, but it needs to be reiterated over and over and over again. And maybe there's somebody we can get through to. Probably not, but let's give it a shot, right? And so the first thing is, you're well aware, because you're not an idiot, that Roe v. Wade being overturned did not ban abortion. Never happened. If you live in a blue state, California, New York, Illinois, Maryland, where I live, abortion is legal now. It will be forever in these areas. Nothing's going to change on that front. All the ruling did was say we, the government, the federal government, should not have a say on abortion because the Constitution does not grant or take away the right to abortion. It does not speak on this issue. And the previous Roe v. Wade ruling tried to say it did in a really legally idiotic way. And so we need to correct that mistake and say, okay, there is no guarantee for abortion, but at the same time, there is no thing in the Constitution that says you can't have an abortion. States, do what you want. That's federalism. And I'm a huge fan of federalism because the idea was that you could live in a state that reflected your values. Now remember, back in the early 18th century, or actually late 18th century, when they were coming up with this concept of federalism in the Constitution, think about travel back then. If you wanted to go from one state to another, you couldn't jump in your car, jump on a train or airplane. You had to get on your horse or just walk to the other state. So moving from one state to another was a massive endeavor. Yet even then, they said, if you live in a state, you can have your own little thing there. If you don't like it, you can move elsewhere. So now think about it. We have our modern transportation, and you can leave your state within hours and go to another state. So if 200 years ago, the founding fathers said, hey, let's have federalism, let's have this idea that each state can sort of do its own thing as long as it doesn't violate the federal Constitution, which protects your rights from the federal government. Let's do that. That way, everybody can sort of choose where they want to live at and the sort of rules they want to live under in that particular state. And now we have modern transportation where people can go anywhere they want. You can get in a plane, fly across the entire United States. So now more than ever, federalism makes sense because it's so easy for people to move from one state to another. So this ruling says states decide, and that should be a great thing. But of course, people are ignorant and they don't actually know what this ruling means. Now, on the issue of federal government and whether or not they should get involved, one thing I've seen from both sides, which I'm not a fan of, is the idea that there should be some sort of federal legislation on abortion, either to guarantee it or to prevent it. And I'm on the right, but I have to admit that when I see people on the right now championing federal rules against abortion after saying, hey, look at this ruling. It's saying return the issue to the states. It's not banning abortion. Oh, by the way, I want a federal law banning abortion. So I think it's a little hypocritical. And personally, regardless of what you think about abortion, in my opinion, it should be left to the states. And I know that irritates some people. People want it banned completely or the other way. But if we're being realistic, abortion will never be banned in this country. I think the best we can do is have it returned to the states and have states try to limit abortion as much as possible. Now, me personally, am I for a complete ban of abortion? Not 100%. I do think there's a little room for an abortion early on in pregnancy if there's issues. I'm not an absolutist on the idea, but my opinion on abortion and your opinion on abortion should have no reflection on this ruling here, because the ruling was not about abortion, whether it was good or bad. It was simply saying the federal government has no role here. And that is what our liberal friends seem to not understand, or they don't want to understand. And that's unfortunate, because this is democracy. Pick a state to live in that supports your values and ideas. And if you live in California, where they're rioting and blocking highways, nothing has changed there. And so it's really frustrating to see this all this outrage and this rioting and this nonsense. And ironically, the impact from this ruling will be somewhat anticlimactic in that only a handful of red states will have some laws limiting abortion. And even then, a lot of these red states aren't going to completely ban abortion. They just want to not have that third trimester abortion, which is, in my personal opinion, it really is some sick stuff. When you have a viable fetus third trimester, in my opinion, that's murder. And when you see the process for abortion at that point, it's so disgusting. I can't imagine how any doctor can perform these procedures. And that's consequently why most doctors actually won't perform abortions. Now, some have argued that if we open this door for state rights for abortion, what about other issues like contraception, interracial marriage? And they're attacking Clarence Thomas, what do they call him, Uncle Thomas now? It's pretty common for the left to attack black conservatives, and it's funny how they claim not to be racist, but if they're angry enough at a black conservative, they start to slip in some racist language. It's funny how that works. But they say, well, if they overturned Roe v. Wade, what about interracial marriage because of contraception? Should that issue be returned to the states? In my opinion, yeah. Now, follow my logic here. Griswold, the Supreme Court said that you can't involve yourself into the private lives of a married couple, and this whole privacy issue is kind of, does it actually exist in the Constitution? Not really. What you do have is unreasonable search and seizure, which of course I totally with. The police should not be going onto your private property to look for things based off on a whim. And say, for example, you have this law saying you couldn't have condoms, for example. Well, who would actually enforce that law in 2022? So you have these laws that are on the books, and this came back from the 19th century, this whole thing with contraception. And no one would actually enforce that. And at some point, the legislature would go, we have this really stupid law. Let's get rid of it. And that's what would have happened eventually. And so there was, in my opinion, no need for the Supreme Court to jump in on this issue. But of course, the Supreme Court jumps in on these issues because these are the ones that are politically charged. Now think about it. Your local government and state has so many idiotic laws. they ban plastic straws. You can't have a Kinder Egg because it's a choking hazard. They've banned fireworks in some states, and some places you can get them. There are a million stupid laws that are on the books. Are they unconstitutional? Not really, but they really are stupid, and they can, sort of take away some of your liberty, I guess. But again, we pay attention to the ones that are politically charged: abortion, gay marriage issue, that kind of things, around race. That's what we pay attention to. So I like the idea of having the states decide most of these issues, even ones that you think, like, wow, interracial marriage, should the states be involved in that and making a decision, not the Supreme Court? Well, what state right now would outlaw interracial marriage? Zero. And this is the issue. The left is constantly projecting on the right what they think we are. So that's why they bring up these issues about interracial marriage and contraception. Oh, if we left it to the states, the conservative states, so they would ban contraception and interracial marriage. No, we won't. It's ridiculous. Not even 30 years ago would we do that. But again, this is the left projecting onto the right what they think we are, which is, of course, racist bigots. So they even can attack Clarence Thomas, a black man who was married to a white woman, and saying, oh, well, Clarence Thomas, what about your interracial marriage? Are you saying that could be banned? It's nonsense. No, it's not going to be banned. And even if this issue was turned over to the states, no state's going to put that in there. And so it's all just a theater to get people all bent out of shape and worked up. So that is not happening. A couple other issues. We had another ruling about prayer. The coach wanted to pray, and he didn't force anybody to do so. And the Supreme Court said he had the right to do that. And I see, again, separation of church and state. There is no separation of church and state in the Constitution. All it says is you cannot have the establishment of religion, the Congress. If the guy wants to pray, whoever he's praying to, that's his business. As long as he's not coercing anybody to participate, then there's no issue there. But again, you see that phrase, separation of church and state, and many liberals actually think that's in the Constitution, and it's not. But they repeat it so often that they've almost convinced themselves that it is. So again, not in the Constitution. And the other thing is, I saw Whoopi Goldberg freaking out saying, well, the Constitution says that black people are, less than a person, blah, 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 blah. Again, another person who is illiterate on the Constitution. And so I'm sure you know this, but I'll repeat it right now. The 3/5 clause, or the 3/5 thing in the Constitution with regards to black people, was a way for the North to not allow the South to have as much representation in Congress as they wanted. The South actually wanted to count the slaves as one person. But, of course, in Congress, in the House, how many representatives you get is based on population. And so they wanted to count the slaves to get more representation in the House. And the North said, no, it's not fair. They can't vote. And you're going to count them and get more representation and more power in the government? Well, we're not going to go along with that. So they had a compromise, the 3/5 compromise. It was purely about representation in the House. It had nothing to do with saying that black people were 3/5 of the person. But here we are, hundreds of years later, and people like Whoopi Goldberg are still saying that because they're morons. And the very last thing, we have the January 6th hearings. This is a IQ test / a integrity test. Everything we're hearing is hearsay. I heard somebody say that President Trump did this. Hearsay. Any court, it gets tossed out immediately. Of course, this is not a real court. This is a star chamber. This is some Soviet-style BS. And so anybody can walk in there and say anything. And our news media treats it like it's the gospel, despite the fact that we know that the dossier was completely made of garbage. We know Russian collusion was garbage. One thing after another has been proven to be absolute garbage. If someone can walk in now, repeat hearsay, and the mainstream media repeats it as if it's the absolute truth. So if you believe anything being said at these hearings, you're an idiot. You failed the IQ test. Now, if you do know that this is BS and you're still repeating it, then you have zero integrity, you're amoral, and you're a piece of garbage. So it's really embarrassing, this hearing. I'm hoping that most people realize how stupid it is. You would think, again, after 5 years of all these lies that have come out to be lies about Trump, that people would start going, okay, this is nonsense. And I for the most part, I do think people realize how stupid this is. And by the time the midterms come along, I don't think this will play any role in the midterms. This is a desperate attempt by the Democrats, who have nothing to run on because they're running this country into the ground. They need something, anything to run on. Not the economy, not inflation. They have nothing to run on. So this is their only effort, or only chance to try to convince some moderates who are waffling there to stay on the side of the Democrats. But I don't think it's going to work. We should see a red wave in November. For the love of God, we need one. If you are content with the inflation, with this war in Ukraine we're funding, the economy starting to crater, negative growth, if you can still vote for Democrats at this point, then we're done. We're finished, and there's nothing anyone can say to convince you otherwise. So, but again, I don't think that will be the case. But who knows? Anything can happen. And now more than ever, we know anything can happen. And so I have no expectations, or I will never say this is going to happen. Who the hell knows? That's the way things are these days. So, well, that's it for now. Again, if you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.